This is the special meeting, normally regular, of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. Today is May 20th, 2021.
Hey, Jason, I know you don't have an official secretary. Do you need me to take minutes? Could be my parting gift.
That would be fantastic.
All right.
Thank you, Tracy.
Sure.
Thank you, Tracy.
And you don't need to write a book, just the highlights.
All right. I like writing books.
I mean, you're welcome to, but usually people don't. Usually people want to avoid that.
Yeah, no, less is more. I agree. All right.
There were no public comments submitted before the meeting, and I also realized that I had neglected to put that on the agenda tonight. But we lucked out in that regard that there are none, and it looks as though no one has also shown up tonight for our meeting. So we'll move right along to the review and approve minutes of the March 18th special meeting. I had circulated those earlier this week. And were there any, oh, first I'll make a motion to approve just to get the process moving here. Tim, you'll second it? All right. Is there any discussion about the minutes?
I just said about the tree swallow nesting boxes update. I think we'd mentioned that we had thought that the Fitzgerald property might not be the best location for them in the meeting.
Yes.
And I don't see that on there.
Yeah, it was in my notes. It's not in the minutes.
You think we should amend the minutes to put it in, or?
I don't know. If you feel very strongly that we explicitly call out Fitzgerald in there, we could.
Wait, so what do you want to do there? You want to say we want to put them in Fitzgerald?
We do not want them. The public sentiment is that they might, there's many other places, but that Fitzgerald might not be the best place.
I mean, to be concise in that section, it could be Jason Morrill will write a letter to the town to provide the final list of locations, comma, excluding the Fitzgerald tract, comma, and indicate that ongoing maintenance will be handled by the Boy Scout troop.
Nice. So approve.
I just kind of tuck it in there.
Yeah.
Any other comments about the minutes?
I don't have any others.
No.
All right. So I'm going to call the vote with that one small amendment to approve.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. The next agenda item is to review and approve the April minutes, which we don't have. So we're going to move past that one. I think our minute taker from the last meeting is a bit overwhelmed with professional responsibilities at the moment, so she didn't get those over to us. The third item on the agenda is the cell tower at 118 Newton Road. Now, this is the same topic that we did discuss last October, so if it sounds familiar, it's because we've been here before. The reason that it's back on the agenda is that I wanted to have the commission one more time sort of have a discussion and decide whether or not we would like to submit a letter of support for the residents that are against the tower, or just submit a letter with statement of fact. But there has been a recent reinterest push by the residents that are up in that area, because Verizon officially submitted their proposal to the Connecticut Siting Council just this past week. And the Connecticut Siting Council will be adding it to one of their monthly agendas sometime between now and October. That meeting is open to the public, and it's open to comment from the town or the general public. So it would be an opportunity for the town or for the Conservation Commission specifically to write a letter and say why the cell tower is not optimal. if there's no initial comments, I'll go on a little bit more. So
Go
just a
on.
little more, yeah. Just a little more background. I did forward on an email with some commentary from the residents, and as well as a link that takes you to the Siting Council's website. There's a whole docket page for this particular proposal. And in that docket, there is a lot of acronyms of like Connecticut Deep was involved. There's other land use and wildlife protection organizations that get involved in the approval process. So there have been a lot of other eyes that have looked at this from an environmental impact position. I think that if we were to make any sort of comment, it would be very focused on Woodbridge in particular, in this area of the town in particular. For obvious reasons, the residents are really not interested in having a cell tower in their backyard. For some people, it's an aesthetic. For others, they believe that there's science to indicate that it can cause harm. I haven't come across any convincing arguments from my perspective, but other thoughts about the cell tower?
Well, I certainly don't think it's an aesthetic enhancement of our town. And I think to that degree, we're trying to conserve it to look like a place that's, as natural and undisturbed as possible. And it isn't helpful to that end.
I'll agree with that. Any other thoughts? Yay or nay?
Well, I know, Tracy, you didn't like the idea of us getting involved in it 6 months ago or so. Is that?
Oh, you're still muted, Tracy.
I said, yeah, just put me on the spot. Why don't you? Sure. What's
I
that?
don't mean to put you on the spot. I just don't mean to be speaking against what you had been thinking of. But I kind of think just having it as a conservation commission, our mission is to make it as, I think it's not in the best interest of our town from the conservation perspective to have another cell tower. I mean, it might be the best for communication and it might be best for the guy who's going to earn a lot of money. I mean, there's lots of benefits to different factions of the town, but the Conservation Commission doesn't benefit from it in terms of our mission to keep so I would be willing to, put a note to the fact that it's not something that we would be enthusiastic about, certainly. I don't know how other people feel about it,
but I'm reading Tim's expression. But I think that the town has already, advocated for new locations around in the area that might service the same geographic area for a cell tower. The tower was reduced in height from 140 feet to 100 feet, which is a pretty big drop.
Yeah.
And I'll say in my research, and I totally agree with Sharon that the Conservation Commission's responsibility is to make sure we are acting appropriately and conserving. In this case, the tower is going to be put on an old farmland, a fallow field that's slowly growing up. There's no trails in the area immediately around it. There's no wetlands around it. I mean,
were there any reasons given why the company rejected all the alternate sites?
I didn't parse that out in the letter. I kind of narrowed in specifically on what their environmental assessment was, the environmental impact assessment.
I mean, could it simply be that this private landowner wants his cut of the tower and there is no reason why it couldn't go there, and so therefore they will just put it there?
Perhaps. I mean,
Yeah.
When I did a site visit, I mean, I drove to the end of Soundview Road, which is the dead end road where an access will be cut in from. I mean, it's, from terms of construction standpoint, it's going to be really simple for them to put it in. They already have a clear road right up onto the property and access to where they want to put it. I think that is a big factor, that it's just easy to build in that location. And maybe the other locations were far more difficult to build on.
One thought I had when I saw, what you forwarded to us, I mean, sure, we could make some kind of, if we know something about the impact on wildlife, we can say something to that effect. I don't know how that would be any different in this location than any other location. But without the merits of, that particular location, we can certainly talk about the impact on wildlife. And I don't know. I'm not opposed to talking about environmental impact if we actually have some, basis for that, other than saying we think it's, if we have a basis for it, let's just say that.
Right. And my personal approach to things is that I don't want to be the always no commission. I think there should be.
Isn't that what we are?
I think there should
Don't
be
change.
No.
I think there should be some good rationale, even science in some cases as necessary to say why no.
Yeah. I'll tell you my difficulty with really voicing an opinion. We are, I think it's going to be a fact that towns will have cell towers. And the question is, where in the towns should the cell towers be located? And it's our charter to recommend to the town the best use of natural resources in the town. And sometimes that recommendation is going to be saying, build here, conserve this. So I don't look at it as conserve everything. Nothing can ever be done. But we have not been really engaged in this to a level that allows me to, express an opinion. As Tracy said, if something had come out and there were some environmental concerns, then yeah, we would have probably had something to grab onto. But we've not really been involved in looking at what the alternate sites were and proposal. We weren't asked to chime in on that or get involved. And so, I mean, we've really been on the outside of this, other than, knowing that some people, neighbors especially, have concerns. But I think we'd have to, in my view, just have a much deeper involvement in order to be strong in a statement. I'm not sure what to say at this point. Sounds like it's been, looked at. It's sort of out of the town's control.
No one's come to present to us on the issues and educate us on these issues, and
Right.
I know nothing about it.
And I'll also make the suggestion that if not here, where there will be another tower added to the town. I mean, as Tim said, this is just a fact that towns will have cell towers.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember looking at the Verizon maps, and this is one area where the cell signal is weaker. So they're advocating to put it in that area at a high point to create the greatest geographic coverage. And if it were not placed there, it might result in two towers trying to cover the same area. And now you've got them in potentially a more environmentally or wildlife tenuous location. Whereas right now it looks like it's going to go on fallow farmland. So I'm going to say that it sounds as though the commission doesn't feel strongly that we have a clear argument as to why the tower should not be placed there. We have certainly general things about, environmental impact or aesthetic impacts. But it's not as though they're trying to build a cell tower in the middle of a swamp with an endangered frog, that would be an easier one to advocate against.
Yeah.
So I'll move it forward and just say that, we've talked about it for a second time, and we seem to have landed on the same point, that there have been other professionals deeply involved with looking at the environmental impact. And we feel that they've done their due diligence, and we can't really add much to the conversation other than we like our town without towers.
Yeah.
I think that's something,
I will go back to Betsy to see if the town was going to submit any other formal letter to the process that's happening with the Connecticut Siting Council. But
Is this Verizon?
yes.
Sometimes I have these sudden strange thoughts. And just curious as to whether this, has been, if there's a different technology solution, I guess I would say, to this challenge of the coverage. So
I believe the tower is meant to supplement what's there now, but also to advance the 5G rollout from Verizon.
Yeah. I mean, 5G, as I understand it, and I won't profess deep understanding, but requires many more hops at I almost think of it as, just the electric utility transformers that used to hang on the poles. And every so often there's going to be a piece of equipment just to pass it on. And if there's a coverage gap, is that technology, which perhaps doesn't have to go 140 feet in the air, an alternative? Is that being explored? And that just a random thought that occurred to me. I have no, knowledge of that, if the tech, the technology does require that at some juncture you have a real tall tower. But as I said, my understanding was that there are going to be a lot of hops at short distances.
Yep. Yeah, and that's my understanding of 5G. It also operates on a different wavelength from the more standard cell 3G and 4G.
So the short way to say it is, if 5G was implemented, would they need a 140 or 100-foot tower?
Right.
So I don't know if that question's been asked, but as we were not engaged, we won't know the answer.
Yep. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm having internet issues, Jason.
Okay.
So I was just booted out and I came back, and I'll do what I can, but just if I disappear, that's what's going on.
Okay.
Speaking of technology, but I missed something you said before Tim started speaking. You said you're going to speak with Betsy and something about the siting council and about the tower, and I didn't catch any of that.
Yeah, I'll let Betsy know that we aren't, as a commission, going to submit any letters, just because we don't really have a solid foundation for a position.
Oh yes. Yep.
And that I would just ask, since the town has already submitted letters for alternate locations, that maybe the town itself can just submit a follow-up letter. They probably already have something written that can be submitted as public comment when the Connecticut Siting Council meets to discuss it.
Right. Thanks.
All right. The next item on the agenda is to review the use designations of open space. This is a document that we started a couple meetings ago. And most recently, Tim and I went before the Woodbridge Land Trust to present this document to get, a little input from them. And they did offer a few corrections, which was nice. And tonight we are back once more having a look at it, and I'm going to let Tim take the lead on this, but hopefully we're very close to, having a first draft that is ready for consumption.
Okay, I'll just have the document up in case we want to page to someplace in the document. Just to add to what Jason had mentioned, we did, as a result of the conversation with the land trust, add one additional protection type, which is the grant of conservation easement protection. That is land trust preferred terminology. And so we decided we would adhere to that. So that's a change in the draft. And then there, as Jason said, there's some minor corrections. I think the next step with this document is to take it before the publicly owned property commission.
Yep.
And I understand they are meeting on this coming Monday.
They are. Yep.
Is that, I didn't see it as a specific agenda item on their agenda, but had made some assumption, Jason, that you would cover it in your liaison report.
Yes, I can.
Sorry, garbled there.
Yeah. I think all of us are having, earlier today, I was having internet issues here at home as well. Yeah, I will present this to Coopop at their Monday meeting.
Okay.
The reason it didn't get presented last time is their last meeting was a TIC workshop. And it wasn't their normal meeting. So I'll have an opportunity this coming Monday to do this.
So, I expect we may get some immediate feedback, and there might be some trailing feedback as they maybe take some time to look through it and discuss it if they have any subcommittees that are relevant. But I would hope that that would be the end of the groups that we had planned to gather feedback from, and that we are probably ready, and I'd hope we would be ready to our next meeting to decide to adopt this as a commission. I don't see any other necessary steps. It's not a forever document. It can be amended and added to and so forth. So I think it's time to bring it to a close. And the thought that Jason had started with is that once we adopt it, we would bring it to the Board of Selectmen and share it with the Board of Selectmen as a way we're trying to standardize conversation across the town and with town entities and the public. So it just, excuse me, I skipped over an item I wanted to get to before we have a discussion of any comments about taking it to the Board of Selectmen, which is, and hopefully you had a time to quickly read through it today. Any other comments from the commission? Things that you want to address, correct, add, talk about?
I think one lingering item was the town ordinance protection. We had sort of this lingering question of whether that is a real thing.
Yes. And I guess perhaps it's not noted in this document, but on the property evaluation tool, I have a note to that effect. No, here it is.
Yeah.
On the share needs assessment if the town does or can do this. And it may be, there's two ways to address that, Jason. One is to try to take it to the town attorney before we go to the Board of Selectmen. The other way is when we go to the Board of Selectmen, he is usually present. So the town officials can make comments on this, whether it's superfluous. So, I'm not sure it's worthy worthwhile to bother his time to ask this one question.
Yeah.
So I would maybe just mark it as a discussion item for the Board of Selectmen meeting if we.
Okay. All right. And maybe, presenting it to Coopop, someone there will be able to latch on
Yes.
and offer some additional insight.
Yeah, obviously. And I say that with the caveat of if one of the commission members has a relationship with the town attorney that's closer, then maybe we can feed it in and get it back real quick. But if we don't have that, then I just have a discussion there.
Okay.
I have a question. In like a year, we decide we want to amend it. What is the protocol for doing that?
I think we discuss it within the Conservation Commission, debate it, approve it or not, and amend the document. And if it's substantial, I think we solicit some feedback if it's somehow, but otherwise we just reissue it with a new version number.
Okay, so I'm just clarifying that if we take it to the Board of Selectmen and we make it an official thing, they don't then have control over it. We still have control over changing it if we feel like it needs it.
Yes, that would be my view of it. The going to the Board of Selectmen is a informational sharing, not only to the particulars of the document, but the fact that we're as a commissioner making an effort to do this across the town and just get their knowledge and understanding that that is what we're up to, and this is says it to be approved by the Conservation Commission. It's not approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Is a product, a work
And that
product.
clarifies my question.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that was a good question because I believe that if the town ever were to formally adopt this in some way, I think to Sharon's point, it might then leave really the control of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
And the change process would definitely be more cumbersome. But
and I would.
Yeah, and I agree with Tim. And I think in the short term, this does still remain a tool used by the Conservation Commission, and hopefully other land use organizations can, make good use of it as well.
I will attempt to put in a very brief change statement. How changes will be handled.
Okay, I think that's good. The other, sorry, Tim.
No, go ahead, Chair.
The other thing I'm just wondering about, and I know this is like, we could have done this earlier, but I think we can still do it later, is just get an idea of I must say, I don't even know if there's conservation commissions in Bethany or Hamden, but see if they have similar documents and see if they're of any interest in, communicating that, or, at some point just seeing how they're dealing with it, just so we integrate our work with other people.
Yeah, time has eroded my memory some, so I asked for a little bit of lack of preciseness on this, but I while researching this to get started, I did survey online conservation commissions in Connecticut and looked through a number of towns, and I don't recall finding relevant documents from towns close by.
Okay. Well, then it might be something to offer other towns once we've gotten used to it, as something that would be helpful for them. Also.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Yep. And I will say that the Orange Conservation Commission, in years past, I'm not sure, the last 3 or 4 years, very active, engaged members. And I think once we're done with it, we could say, this is something we created. Just thought we would point it out to you.
Yeah. Does anyone know the date on which the new selectmen start?
I want to say it's going to land somewhere mid-June.
so that if my objective stated that we could approve it at our next meeting, which would be third week of June.
Yep.
Then subsequent to that, we would be, trying to take it forward. So by that time, we would have a liaison from the Board of Selectmen, perhaps.
We should.
And so, that is a person that, going back to Sharon's question and point, that about who owns this, but, I guess that would be a person we would probably brief first and could make sure it's clear going in that this is a conservation commission, will control it, but and share our objectives with bringing them up to speed.
Yep.
So, Jason, I guess I was interested in how you may have thought we should take this to the Board of Selectmen. What's that process? I'm not familiar.
So the way that I think this one will play out, I'll take it to Coopop on Monday, get their feedback. At our next meeting, so June 17th is our next meeting, we would formally adopt it and then take it forward to the Board of Selectmen. I don't know if at June 17 we would have a liaison appointed to us already. So that kind of makes a deciding point. So if we've got a liaison, we might have another different approach. But assuming we do not have a liaison, to move it forward, it would just be a matter of getting an agenda item on the Board of Selectmen meeting. And it would be a presentation by the Conservation Commission showing the property use designation and protection types. And I would wrap it into the plan of conservation and development, because this sort of folds into that bigger picture. And that way it kind of grounds the conversation in their mind as something that's relevant to the bigger picture, not just this one-off document the conservation made.
So it's a building block for our next revision of the plan of conservation and development.
Yeah. Because I think it's helpful when we go to the Board of Selectmen, sort of, whenever you present something, show how it fits in the bigger picture of the town.
Yeah, there needs to be a story, certainly.
Yeah.
So
I think I can be presented with or without a liaison.
Yes. Yeah. And if there is a liaison, I think that we probably owe it to the liaison to, get them up to speed first, and perhaps use them to get the agenda item set up and be able to have our back, hopefully at the meeting.
Yep.
So as I figure it, that means July, there are 2 Board of Selectmen meetings a month, right? I just think they usually take August off. But I also imagine that it's a changing of personnel. So they might want a meeting or two to get grounded in their roles before we bring this. And I mean, I just don't know strategically when is the best time, but it might not be the best time at their very first meeting as a group.
Yeah. Or it could be a soft introduction as well. Since it's not something that we're asking them to do, it's mostly just an FYI.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that might be true too.
And it's a good way of just reminding everybody that we're here.
Yeah. Getting visibility as soon as they're out of the starting gate. And hopefully we can build on it.
Are we saying that no one from the commission is actually going to present it? We're going to ask someone from the board of selectmen?
No. There would be a presentation by conservation to the board of selectmen. Yeah. It wouldn't have to be a big show. I mean, it could just be here's a copy of it. This is what we're using it for. This is how it fits into the POCD and the bigger picture of property ratings.
Just a couple minute overview and questions, hopefully. And if they're new members, to Sharon's point, they may ask questions on the plan of conservation and development. So I think we need, and Jason, does this happen with one person, or do you get to bring multiple people from the Conservation Commission in?
Whoever wants to show up.
Okay. Well, I think there's some
I think it's helpful. if it-
knowledge from the people who have been on the Conservation Commission for some time that can address some questions that I'm surely in the dark about.
In my past experience, it's usually a very easy presentation, brief
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah.
And having multiple members there is nice, just to show
Yeah.
a presence.
Yep.
I mean, I think it makes sense for you both to be there. If you'd like me to be there, just send me a text or an email, and it's usually earlier in the evening than when I usually am working into 6 or 7 on Wednesdays, but I can make an adjustment if I know ahead of time.
Okay.
If it's relevant. If you think it's not relevant, that's fine. And Tracy, am I to understand that you're going off the Conservation Commission? Is that what you?
Yep. I'm done.
Ah,
All right. Anything else on,
Yeah, the very last thing, which is an item, not to be discussed in detail tonight, but I want to raise it in terms of this document. If we've said that this is a document we've constructed to have enhanced communications between the town entities and use as a common language, then I think we have to make sure it's available to all the town entities.
Yep.
Easily when they have it or when we update it and we can post changes. And so it brings up the question of how are we going to share it? Where will it live? And is there a repository for the documents that we generate out of the Conservation Commission, or in concert with CUPOP, et cetera, et cetera. So not to be discussed at length tonight, I know, but I think this is our, I won't say it's our first document, but I think because we're saying let's share it, we should be able to share it relatively easily. And then the other towns can get to it too, to the point that was raised.
Yep. And in the past, for example, getting the open space plan onto the website, I passed it to Betsy. She put it in the document repository online and made a link to it from the Conservation Commission's page of the town website. So I would foresee this document and any others that are related to it doing the same, getting them on our particular page on the town website.
Okay, is that easy enough for people to access? And I mean, you've already talked about a couple steps with Betsy in between, and
yeah,
and I tend to favor more of the open source, the box type of applications that are just file managers online.
Yep.
And it's public, so should not be a challenge to share it.
Yeah, and I've got several thoughts on that. One is that since it's a municipal document, it should stay with the municipality's presence online. However, there have been challenges with the municipality maintaining their documents years over years over years. When they change web hosting providers, for example,
Yep.
there has been a loss of documentation.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think there is some benefit to having it in two places.
Yeah. Well, and if this is a Conservation Commission document, then I think we're within our reasonable approach to have a repository for our documents.
Yeah.
And then we can give access to who we need to give access to. So
Yep.
The town can have the official copy, I guess, but this would forestall it. Okay, that'll be a down the line once we adopt it.
All right. So the next agenda item is to review the draft property rating system. And I know Tim had presented this to us in a prior meeting. I think it was even in the April meeting. It's a spreadsheet. And Tim just brought it on the screen there for us to review together. And this one, I'm going to let Tim definitely run with it. I don't know what has changed since then. I don't know if Tim had taken some of the feedback and made some adjustments since our last meeting. But unlike the property use or the the use designation document. This one has not yet visited any other organization. I think, Tim, you may have talked about the idea with the land trust, but I don't know how deep you went into a discussion with them on it. So,
Okay, so let me start there, Jason, and just clarify that a little bit. In fact, I have shared as a result of the last meeting actually, where I did ask if even at this early draft state, it could be shared with the land trust, and got a positive response. So the land trust has a 3-person, committee who are looking at a very similar set of challenges, evaluating which properties they should acquire. And so we did go through our approach in detail with them. And I'm going to really high level summarize and say that they seemed to be, generally understanding and accepting of this part of the evaluation.
okay.
But the place where they, really expressed some trepidation was when we got to prioritizing properties. And, it engendered a conversation and perhaps a different approach. And that's the primary discussion point for tonight. I hope it's not the only discussion point. Well, somebody will have to call time if we're going too long, but because, if we use priority codes we went through in the last session and we said, what are the reasons that you would prioritize? Okay, we sort of agreed on that, even with the misspellings. And, to prioritize, I had laid out, well, the way I laid it out, if you're going to prioritize, you have to rank order the items, the attributes. And then you have to, decide how many points you're going to give to an item. And, it gets sort of, detailed, and there's a lot of, and the land trust, in their view, thought this was going to be very difficult to achieve. And so long story short, through some conversations and thinking about it, we wondered if even trying to, get to a priority ranking is even appropriate or needed. Certainly we want to evaluate and understand the properties, but the counter thought was, perhaps at the end of this research and evaluation, understanding that we end up simply with saying, hey, is this property worthy of acquisition, and why? And we have and let me flip over now and show you the acquisition codes. These are some of the reasons we might want to, or the town might want to acquire property. And, we've talked about some of these before. We have a priority for this year to talk about the Greenway extension and see what properties might be suitable to extend the Greenway. And there are other recognizable, I hope, reasons why we would want to acquire a property. So some properties are worthy of acquisition in our view. It's an evaluation, and some are not. And we develop an inventory of the properties, and these are always, of course, you can go back and reevaluate given changes in town, but it would simplify doing the tool. So that's the point I believe in the last meeting we left off. And Jason, I know you had made a statement that you wanted to take it back and think about it, about, the use of the priority rankings specifically. And so that's where I wanted to start tonight, is to say, is it worth to try to, to force the ranking, to establish the points, and then calculate not just, a raw score, but a priority score. And this, the tool with the priority ranking, column unhide, you would, end up with both a raw score and a priority set of priority points. And, more points is a more important property to acquire. As opposed to just saying, hey, let's just make, let's have a discussion, given what we know and what our objectives are. Is it worthy acquiring this property, and why? And, let people know when we did it, and move on.
So my quick comment to that is, I think adding priority, as much as my brain loves the idea of weighting and scaling, and it's probably because I'm more of an engineer than anything else, it's fantastic to my numbers brain. But I think it's bogged us down in years past. And your feedback from the work group at the land trust seemed to validate the fact that it's probably true. It's probably bogging down the process. And in that case, let's not continue down that path at this point. I think that just going with the raw score and then making that subjective decision of whether it's worthy of acquisition or not.
So I'll add two things. Sharon, to give credit, Sharon raised a very similar concern last time about the challenge on doing the priorities. So it's not just the land trust. We heard it from within the commission itself. And if I think about, and this is not captured in the tool per se, if I think about a property being worthy of acquisition, I think there are projects or initiatives that might drive a property being worthy of acquisition, and those may, come along, every couple of years, that all of a sudden, we want to expand the greenway, so a property that we never had interest in before is now of interest. So we might be doing this through a lens of a need. Okay, we need to find the cell tower in this part of town. So we evaluate the properties and come up with a suitable property that, looking at the cell company's maps, they have gaps. We look at the properties that are around there and we say, this would be the best balance between having cell towers and communications and aesthetics of the town and concerns of the citizens. And that's the property we should, worthy of acquisition for that reason. So
that makes sense to me.
I don't know how many of those there are. I can, I think if we go to the acquisition codes, some of them lend themselves to that. They may come along. I mean, we're looking for places to put affordable housing. Maybe that, we do that initiative. There's we find out that, the Wepwag's polluted. I'm really making this up now, but, the recreation department needs another ball field. Boom. Those are, long-term, that we look at those properties. So.
Well, I am a little confused by your example, because I don't think we buy, maybe I'm wrong. Conservation Commission wouldn't buy a property so that someone could have a ball field, I don't think. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the town would.
Yeah, the town would, and then we could evaluate whether it also would have conservation benefit. That makes sense.
Well, I think, no, Sharon, I look at it a little more expansively. I look at it as, we know the recreation department is going to want to build ball fields. We know cell companies are going to have cell towers. We know that people are going to want to build affordable housing. So if we look a little more expansively and say, what's the use of the natural resources in the town, then we should be saying, well, what's the vision? What's the plan to accommodate these needs that we know are coming down the road? Not just because we're going to
Well,
be
I think our
preserving some properties, but we're going to be developing some others in town. And that's the reality. And I think we our charter is not to just recommend places that should be conserved. Our charter is to recommend the use of the natural resources.
I can see how it could be a tool in the sense of we're not looking at it from an acquisition position, but looking at what is the most suitable parcel for a particular purpose. If, for example, the Conservation Commission is asked, if we were to put a cell tower over near the old, I don't know, the old town dump, where would that best be? Or we need a cell tower, in the southeastern corner of the town, and try to stay ahead of the game. And before somebody says, ooh, I want that income on my property, maybe we could have a list of properties that.
But I'd like our focus to stay on conserving. I mean, there's plenty of focuses of people who are trying to build ball fields or people building cell towers or affordable housing. We're the only one who are really preserving land. And I take that really seriously. And it's not just a land to then be used for all sorts of humanitarian purposes, because, land has value just because it's land. And that is our job, in my opinion, is to make sure there's as much land that is environmentally helping our town because of its natural state, not because it's a ball field. So I feel very strongly that, I think that if there is a ball field happening and it's a piece of land that has a lot of conservation benefit, that would be really important for us to speak about. But I don't want to be a tool of the CUPOP or the cell towers to help them do development. There's lots of development happening as far as I can tell.
Yeah. To me, it's a planning tool so that we're not coming in late in the game trying to argue against something that's a done deed, that we get out ahead of it. So we're conserving the most valuable pieces of property from a conservation point of view, but recognize that there are certain developments that are going to happen, and we want to steer those to things that have the least value conservation wise.
I understand that. That makes sense too. Okay. So,
and Sharon, I'm interrupting, excuse me. A little, a bother I've had living in town. I just haven't seen planning done in a serious way. It's things that look out across the years and does planning. So maybe this is a little bit of a, what do you call it? A Don Quixote endeavor here, but
But I do agree that intentional creating of beneficial things for our town is better than just them popping up. And
yeah.
So I'm not disagreeing with that. I just want to make sure that.
Yeah. It may not be realistic in the end, but I think that if we want to conserve the most important pieces of land and not find out that somebody's building a solar farm on a couple of our trails, we need to get ahead of it. So that's where I am.
Okay.
It's just.
But I'm in agreement with the fact that this tool, I think, is useful for us to understand where the assets are and the values are in different lands. But the ranking system, I think when opportunities come by, we will use it to determine how important it is and then make a decision based on that as to whether we think the land should, conserving the land makes sense. And I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but Jason, you put forth two different things of money that was becoming available, possibly from the state and stuff, and that which makes the idea of us acquiring land more feasible. And I think this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'd like some education on what those are and what that means so that we can think about that when we are thinking about a piece of land, because that might give us a lot more leverage than we are aware of to actually do some conserving. So I'd like to put that on the agenda for next month, if possible, to understand that more and learn more about that.
I'll make a note about that. Yeah, and that was, and I'm trying to remember what the email was explicitly. I think it was a talk about combining the Connecticut Deep Open Space and Watershed Acquisition Grant along with a new federal grant that makes a match a little more easy.
And I'm just even wondering if we in the land trust should talk about that together in terms of all educating ourselves about that, because they've been pretty good at utilizing some of that, whereas I'm very ignorant about all that.
Yeah. I'm just making a note here.
Thanks. I didn't mean to digress there, but I just wanted to make sure I thought about it. So Tim, in this, what we're saying is we'll use the tool that you have as a way to evaluate land. We're not going to use the priority part right now, but we can we're not unusing it. We're not never going to use it or discarding it totally. We're just going to stay more fluid at this point. Is that the take home message?
That's a good way to put it, but it's not Tim saying it. I think I'd like the commission to say that's what makes sense. So I would like to come to consensus on that.
Yeah, no, I'm just
put aside the priority piece, ranking piece, because it's been there in past tools and it's a break from the past. And but trying to think of a new approach that'll simplify it and perhaps get a greater number of properties evaluated.
Well, I don't know if there's a proposal there, but I second the idea.
I agree. Take away the priority. Let's simplify it.
Okay. So let me just outline then the next steps as I see them. If we've taken that philosophical step, then excuse me. Then the next business would be, and tell me if this is today or next time, is to go through here in detail, make sure these are the right pieces of information, all the way down here, the left-hand side.
I'm not seeing your screen. I don't know why not.
Oh, you are screen sharing, so.
It doesn't matter. I have it here on my, I have it.
Okay, great. So I guess I'll hide the priority column. And, for the attributes, I do have a question of whether we need this attribute on row 18. But then within the attributes, even to get a raw score, we have some scoring. So I'd like to get consensus that this is the way we should do the raw scoring. At that point, I think we would be done with the tool itself if we can come to consensus on that. I would think we would want to have a conversation about how to test the usability of it with a limited pilot. And so those are the steps I would see. So Jason, I'll turn it back to you in terms of timing. I don't know what else, don't remember what else is on the agenda. And
no, this is it. I mean, the last thing is just the report at the end, and I've just got a couple quick items.
Okay. So should we go forward, just do these in detail? Just to get any feedback or changes?
I think,
or
yeah, I think we can go through it.
additions? Okay. And again, it's two other points on this then. Once we agree on all these details, then I think, again, we adopt it. And we can share it out with, I told the land trust, I would keep them up to date as what we're doing. And I would imagine we also want to keep Coopop up to date on this, because they are part of the same evaluation that's needed for the plan that's coming up in a couple of years.
Yep.
That we need to put together. So Jason, I don't know if this, we're going to be close enough for you to include this on Monday with them.
I feel like we are close enough to at least give them the heads up and, make them aware that this is a tool that conservation will be using.
Yeah.
And that these are the attributes that we're looking at.
Yep. And I'd love to have this done for next time. So that when we go to the Board of Selectmen, we could also present this.
I 100% agree, because they kind of, the two documents, the two tools go hand in hand.
Yeah.
They work together. So over on the left side, you've got ownership, street number, street name, acres, etc. I think those are all good. I don't see any reason to not include them. It does provide some helpful info. Since we're deciding to take away priority, that particular entry down on row 17 could probably get taken out.
17.
Property priority points.
That's true. Okay.
And would you just say property score instead of property raw score?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good catch.
What does rating confidence level mean?
That we have a list of confidence levels. And the idea with this, Sharon, is that there's going to be, different levels in which we do our research, and we'll have different people with different levels of expertise.
Okay, yeah, I
who will do
remember
the
that.
research.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay.
So the new items you put down below site notes, you had worthy of acquisition, primary acquisition code, and date of designation.
Yeah.
Those all sound good to me.
Yeah. Do we need, Jason, to interrupt? Do we need like secondary acquisition codes? Or
Well, that was going to be my question. So
yeah.
up further, for property use designation, we have the ability to have multiple codes in there.
Yeah.
It seems as though it's worth having multiple acquisition codes in here.
Okay. I'll just
Having just a single acquisition code or two acquisition codes might be.
Yeah. I couldn't completely justify this, but I just have this sense that it may be worthwhile to isolate the primary reason. And
To force people into making a decision.
Well, yeah. What's driving it? Is this part of the greenway, or is this? I don't know. And it may be that we'll pilot it and we'll go, yeah, don't need that, and get rid of it.
I think if it's a matter of every time a property is deemed worthy of acquisition, it gets 6 acquisition
Yeah.
codes.
Yeah.
That's a bit much.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was just my thought on
Yep.
the acquisition code. But otherwise, that left-hand column, I think, is in good shape.
Yeah. And most of it is, at least at the top, is in concert with what's been done previously in the inventory plan of conservation and development. All right. Here, we've been over these attributes. We did, just by the way, have, if there's a number here, and forgive me, I can't remember the conversation at our last meeting or not. If an item has a number, in the final version, it will not have a number. the numbers are there because the numbers correspond to an attribute that the land trust was considering in their evaluation tool. So when I was talking to them, we did come down and say, you know what, the conversation just forced this question: do we need this? That this is do we need things that are a town need? Is that really an attribute?
Well, that's what I have a question. I'm not sure this is appropriate, but as I'm looking at may support multi-level family affordable housing. I mean, I think that's a worthy cause, but I don't know if that's a conservation attribute that makes us want to buy a piece of land. I mean, I think it would make us not want to buy that piece of land because it might be something that.
Well, if we don't buy it, somebody, somebody may take and develop that affordable housing on a piece of land we would rather have for conservation purposes.
I see. Okay, for that reason, I think I like it. It's not so you have it as a reserved piece of land for affordable housing.
I mean, I go back and, wherever the address is that the proposal is for, I just anticipate that, a lot of people don't want it built there. And I keep asking, well, if not there, where? I think, where should it be? So the town should plan for that. And I guess there's a working group that I haven't seen any more information on, but they're supposed to be working on some type of plan. But I would think that we would have something to say about the parcels of land. So yeah, these are kind of Conservation Commission specific items here. These are shared by the Land Trust. So I feel very good about those. It was just this question: it's identified by town as in needs. Is that covered by the rest of the items?
You mean it's identified by a town? No, I don't think so. I think
okay. So we should keep that, Sharon.
I think so because.
Okay. Jason.
So my question on that is just looking at that phrase. It's not immediately clear what it means. Identified by a town entity as desirable. So.
Well, maybe something that maintains the character of the town. Like you don't necessarily want to build a high rise right next to the old schoolhouse that was just renovated.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I guess.
I just want to make sure that any system that's developed is clear on its face. It doesn't require a deep paragraph of explanation behind it. And
okay.
then include it, but maybe reconsider, is that too much of a complex item to be scored with a 0 or a 9? Okay.
So the simple way to say this would be the town wants it.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason they want it. And so I
think that's a lovely description. It says exactly what it means.
Well, yeah. So if you want to write that, I'm glad to write that. If there's a better way to say it, just help me out.
Are we saying the town members want it or the town?
The town government.
Because I think there is pieces of land that the town people might petition to say they want it because it helps, like the Fitzgerald property, for instance, people would, certainly write letters and be talking about because people want it.
Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily the town who wants it, but it's the citizens who feel like it.
Yeah. That is not that, that may be valid. We can come back and talk about that, but that's not what this item was supposed to be encompassing. This item was, in my terminology of a town entity, which I think I've used other places, but may not be clear, admittedly, is that this means either the town government or some organization in town. So if the Woodbridge Park Association, just to grab one, said we really need that piece of property in order to complete, something we're trying to do, that would be, something that's been identified as desirable. If the people at, recreation said, hey, we'd like to get that town because we want to build a horseshoe pit on it, that's desirable. So
Is it,
that's what-
and this
don't-
might be mixing it or watering it down too much, but is that reflected in the worthy of acquisition? Yes, no? I know it's a slightly different scope,
yeah,
but is the
Yeah.
same sentiment there? Like if rec thought something was valuable, would conservation say, nah? Or,
well, I mean, maybe, but I think that's, this having it here helps you fill out the profile, and you'll have a discussion with, seeing how things are scored, and hopefully, my graph, oh, there it is. There might be a graphic there to help you visually understand where the, more, what are the salient reasons why this piece of property is desirable for dependent on the attributes. And then, it may be that even though recreation wants to build horseshoe pits, that, yeah, it's really not worthy of acquisition. Go build them someplace else, in our view. That doesn't mean, that doesn't mean that, the town's not gonna, go and acquire the piece of property for that reason, but that would be
Well, I think
our
that
evaluation.
I like it better that the people of the town value it as open space, and we should take our cues from the people of the town who value a piece of land as open space. So I might add something, because that's what I thought it meant, and I kind of like that, is that, if
Okay, so I'm adding that, Sharon. I still can't see my screen. I'm typing people of the town value this, I'm gonna say parcel, as open space.
yeah. I mean, I think there's certain places that people are much more clued into wanting to be open space than others. And for good reason, because they visually see it, because they enjoy it, because they
Yep.
use it.
Okay.
But, and I don't know if we should be doing the bidding of the rec department or any, as in our consideration. I'm not sure we shouldn't, but I hadn't ever thought of us being a conduit that helped other departments have things that were generated. I thought we were just conserving now and not creating a horseshoe pit for people.
Yeah, but I think there is Jason, you're gonna have to help me out in this. Isn't there I'm gonna say the word mandate, it's the wrong word, within either the plan of conservation and development or one of the other documents that says that we will evaluate certainly all the town-owned property and maybe I guess all property, but can you speak to that, Jason?
I think there is, if it's not explicitly laid out, I think there is at least allusion to a partnership between conservation and other town entities like rec,
Yeah.
to make sure that we're not working at cross purposes, that we are working together, and where we have differences that we come to an agreement. I agree that we are not, a tool for rec to use, but I think that we are cognizant of rec's needs when we're looking at things.
I like that. I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sharon, I would just add, and maybe it's already clear, if rec is going out and doing their thing and looking for a piece of land to build horseshoe pits on, this works in a wonderful way. They would use our terminology and maybe our property profile tool to capture the details on the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 parcels that they're interested in. And it will aid in our mutual discussions of why no, that land should be conserved.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Hopeful. I'm not sure they will.
It's hopeful, and it may be tilting at windmills, as I said before, alluded to, but I think we've started down the path of trying to share the tools and letting other people leverage the tools, not leveraging the Conservation Commission, but leveraging the tools so we can share information. Hopefully, the land trust is going to do a bunch of properties, and Zoom, they're sort of done for us.
Yeah. I can see it argued both ways to keep that attribute in there. Is identified by a town entity as desirable.
Yeah. All right, we don't have to answer that tonight. We can chew on that one.
Okay, I'm not opposed to it outright. I just think we need to keep our emphasis on the.
Yeah, no, I like.
So I
that.
agree. I don't think we need any more discussion about it tonight.
Yeah.
I'm about to need to get off the phone, so.
Okay, so then we'll save for next time, whether, just look through the ones that have multiple answers or percentage of coverage of wetlands, what the points are, and just see that we agree with the scoring rubric. And then we can also talk about how we kind of pilot this in a reasonable way. I think
my
that's
last comment would be, at least on this, I'd love to see it move forward. I think we've sat on it for many years because of the complexity in the past. So if we scale it back and make it simple is better than nothing at this point. So I'm okay with keeping it simple.
Excuse me. Yeah, me too.
okay.
All right. So I will, is you're okay with it, Tim? I'll just share with Coopop on Monday that the draft that we have right now.
I will make endeavor to, tomorrow I have a challenging day, but I'll endeavor over the weekend to make the changes we talked about tonight.
Yeah.
And get you over a copy.
I think even if you aren't able to make those changes before Monday, that's okay. I think the changes
Okay.
that we've talked about tonight are not drastic.
Yes, right.
I'll definitely say that we are not prioritizing. I think that's a big shift. But I
Yeah.
think the rest of the whole document sort of stands on its own for a basic draft discussion. So they have an understanding of what we're doing. And if they have any big thoughts, that would probably come out then.
Okay, very good.
All right. Last item on the agenda tonight is the chairman's report. And I have two items. The first one is that the Connecticut Trails Day happens on June 6th. This is the partnership we were going to do with the Massaro Community Farm. And Tim shared his screen. I'm going to share my screen, and I got to pick the right window first. Where'd it go? Oh, hold on. So the Trails Day is starting. They require registration. So there's a website here. I'll just throw this up on the screen real quick. This is the Massaro Community Farm Trails Day. That is going to be limited to 15 attendees. Registration is required. And I'll be up there helping out with the event on that date. There is no rain date. So it's Sunday, June 6th at 10 a.m. or not at all. So that's coming up.
I will be out of town. Do you know that there's a this Sunday there's a getting rid of invasive species trail event at Lorraine Drive or somewhere right by Woodside Drive?
I believe that's the one that Andy is leading.
Yeah.
And I'll be there with my brush cutter.
Great.
So I will be out
We have
there.
a great tool that I'll bring. I have
I'll
to
be out
bring
there.
it back down from Lee. Okay,
I'll be out there decimating the barberry out in the-
yes, what a great idea. Okay.
And the last chairman's report item is a bit of a hard news to break to everybody. But after 8 years, I'm going to be stepping down from the Conservation Commission. Yeah, it's time. I've been in a leadership role. I mean, going back to Massaro, this guy just needs a break. It's been a great ride, and I am grateful to have the opportunity to have spent 8 years as a chairman in this role. And I think that the commission is in a great place moving forward right now. You could say I'm going out on a high note. I don't know. But even though I've got one more meeting, I will be here beyond that for support questions. I want to make sure that things are passed along in a good transition, that nothing is left out, and that the members that are still on the commission don't feel abandoned or, left to hang in the wind. I'll make sure that I can provide whatever support I can, even though I will not officially be on the commission. So
Thank you for all you've done, Jason.
Yeah, Jason, really a lot. Sorry to hear, though.
I'm still around. I'm not going anywhere.
What's your succession plan?
Right now, to not have any meetings outside of work and have as little responsibility as possible outside of work.
No, I mean, actually for the chair, do you have a?
So the commission actually is responsible for promoting its own chairman. Sometimes it happens, there's a huge turnover and there's recommendations from outside the commission as to who could be. But ultimately it can be up to the members of the commission themselves. So it could be a discussion among the members that comes up with it. It could be a discussion with members as well as other town leadership as to who might best fill the role. But I have been talking with Beth about my departure and letting her know so that she's prepared as well. And, Tracy, you're on your way out as well. So there'll be 2 vacancies to be filled right away. And that is one of the first things that the new Board of Selectmen does do. They come in and they make sure that commissions are fully staffed. As Tim alluded to before, a liaison is appointed, which would be fantastic. We had some great liaisons in the past. Over the last few years, we have not. So I'm hoping that the commission gets a good, strong liaison put in with the new Board of Selectmen terms that are coming in June.
And do we know if Leland or Frank or those guys are going to plan to
I
be
haven't
attending?
heard that either of them are stepping away. I will speak to each of them individually. I was hoping they would be here tonight to hear the news, but I'll let them know as well about the change up that's coming. So one more meeting. I'll be here for the June meeting and help guide things forward as best I can.
So can we put that on the agenda to talk about this at the June meeting?
We can. Yep. I think the official appointment of chair, there is a vice chair, and secretary would come in the July meeting of the Conservation Commission, at which point there might be new members on the commission as well. So new stuff coming. Good stuff. Can have fresh energy.
Jason,
Yes,
Gi- given that this transition, make any sense for you to take someone along with you on Monday to Coupomp to be able to start to build that, dialogue going forward? Because that's going to be an important working together on property evaluations going forward.
Sure. Whoever would like to join me. Tracy, I'm gonna guess not, since she's not gonna be around.
Yeah. No, I'd be happy to join you if that's appropriate to Coupomp.
Yep, I think that would be good. Also, I think Coopop, I don't know who they don't know. So I'm not sure who they know on conservation other than me. Our prior liaison had left our commission some years back.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be good to have a little extra FaceTime.
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Well, with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
I second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Okay, good night, Tracy. Thank you for your service.
Yes, Tracy,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
We'll miss your steady psyche.